Sorry, it's Passport City this morning. All right, what I have for you is, a copy of the TIF report that I need to send in to Department of Revenue. I did not give you the entire report, but it is certainly available if you wish to look through it all. This is something, because we have TIF, as a county TIF, we have to let the Department of Revenue know what is our status every year. How much debt do we have? What income did we take in, and what are our expenses? So that's what you're seeing on here. Our urban renewal area is the wind farm, so that is the name of this. The TIF outstanding debt is at $5,395,000. And this is the report, as you can see at the top. This was fiscal year 22 to 23. The TIF revenue that we took in, let's see, our cash balance going forward, we had $389,495 in this TIF fund on July 1 of 22. The TIF revenue that we took in as taxes was the $910,289. We have interest, property tax replacement claims, those are credits. So our total revenue was $915,055. Now our expenditures. We don't have rebate expenditures, so it's called a non-rebate expenditure. $348,035, that was our fees for Northland and our payment to them. So that was the only expenditure we had. We have paid off the loan from the general fund. That's already been taken care of. So all we have is our Northland expense. And that then leaves balance, TIF special revenue fund cash balance at $956,515. Outstanding debt end of year $4,090,060.
Motion to approve or accept?
Yep.
I move to accept the urban renewal report.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright, motion passes.
And then from the report that I gave you last week, yes, I just need your signature.
Okay.
That is the request. You determined last week that you were going to ask for the maximum.
Yeah, and that's the, yep,
Two sheets next to sign or just one?
Yeah, I think there's
I think
two.
there's a second.
All right, thank you.
okay. Next item is discussion regarding imposition of the local option sales and services tax within the unincorporated areas of Greene County.
So I know Don and Pete have had discussions with Heidi and Kristen from Allers and Cooney concerning our wording on our local option, our revenue purpose for the local option sales tax. And she felt that it needed to be cleaned up. And last week we had a small discussion because you two were here, and so we tabled it until this week. There's actually would be two questions on the ballot. The first one would be changing our revenue purpose statement, and it would go from right now it reads 100% property tax relief and any other lawful purpose. What they want us to change it to clean it up, it would just read 100% for any lawful purpose. I think in the discussion, we decided that, if we leave the secondary road funding the way it is, and we still take out the money that we usually budget for a patrol vehicle, we would still have enough money in our reserves to make the payment for the additional amount that we would need to finish financing the HVAC system. with leaving the funding the way it is, I think Heidi felt, I know originally if we could find another revenue source for the 380 that we transferred to secondary roads, we would be able to pay off the note like in 6 to 10 years. Since we're gonna leave the funding the way it is, that may be stretched out to 10 to 15 years, just depending on what interest rates and everything are at the time. So that's one discussion that you need to have, and then the second one is when we do change, the revenue purpose statement, the sunset date on the local option sales tax right now is 2027. And what would happen is you can make your decision at this time whether you wanna put a new sunset date on it, or if you just want it to be perpetual and not have a sunset date on it. So that's the second part of the discussion.
So we passed the bond for the jail. That's done.
That's done.
We've got the expense of the new communications tower. Where's that stand?
The communication tower, I'm not sure,
That was 3 million?
3.2 million. And I'm not sure, they came and did the walkthrough, Thomas, was you involved or Jack?
Yeah, so there's been actually quite a bit of activity on that front. So anytime you build a tower that has to be permitted by the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, there's I think it's called a Section 106 process. I'd have to look at the federal code, where we need to consult with Native American Indian tribes, because there is a alleged Native American burial site at Seven Hills Park. So that's actually a pretty lengthy process. It's called a consultation process. So we are in the process of consulting with Native American tribes to ensure that any human remains or historical artifacts are not disturbed during the construction of the tower. We're moving along. We've made a lot of progress. We're just not quite there yet. The state archaeologist and it's called the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Officer, have to sign off on it. We have to kind of assure them that we have, in good faith, consulted with Native American tribes before they'll grant the final okay to move forward with the tower. So I think hopefully my goal had been the end of this calendar year. It's probably going to be early 2024, where we'll finally get all the approvals we need to move forward with the construction of the tower.
At this point, nothing's stopped that. I mean, we're still moving forward.
No, I can't guarantee anything. So there were 3 Native American tribes that to varying degrees expressed interest in the project. We have received formal approval from one of the 3 and verbal assent from the other 2, but the State Historic Preservation Officer wants to see it in writing before we get the final approval. But I'm very confident everything's going to move forward.
So we've got that 3.2 million.
Right.
Then we've got our discussion about Courthouse rehabilitation. And what was that number?
Like 1.8. We have 1.8
Yeah.
In
from
ARPA.
ARPA funds, but I think the total project, I don't know, I never did see a latest, is it like 3 point?
It's in excess of 3 million, I think,
Yeah.
Billy.
And I think they were saying like between 1.6 and 1.8.
Yeah.
Are up?
But the tower, funding
It's, well, county, it's essential county purpose, and so we bonded for it, and, yeah,
I mean, everything,
yeah.
Everything.
Well,
except ARPA. Is that? What can ARPA funds be used for?
They've kind of expanded the use for it, I mean, a lot, depending on how much money the counties have gotten, they've done like grant programs, to outside entities. Some of them have been using it for buildings and upgrades, ventilation. At first, they were pretty specific on what you had to use it for, but I think they've broadened
yeah,
what you could use it for.
so our project fits the scope of the ARPA
Yes.
funds.
And you, right from the beginning, I know you guys designated, you had to designate how you were gonna spend the money.
Yeah.
And there was a resolution that,
And that's not changeable? How would
I'm sure you could change it, just by another resolution, but that's how it's, you initially,
I'm just trying to, the big picture of all the money that's moving around and how it's moving around and where it's originating from.
The only thing with local option sales tax is, this isn't new. It's not a new tax.
No.
Yeah.
No, and if we bond for what we wanna do beyond the ARPA funds for the courthouse, that is a new tax.
Yes, correct.
well, it's the same money.
If we use the
You're
local option.
If you're, yeah, it's not a new tax, I mean, we're still receiving the money in just like we normally have. It's
Well, I
just
think what
we're
John's
paying-
saying, if we didn't use local option sales tax for the courthouse project and had to bond for it, that would be,
If we use that local option sales tax towards the tower,
but we would bond for it.
But you've already bonded for that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we've
Yeah, we've
taken
already
care of the-
bonded, we've got the
financed that
money,
on that.
Yeah,
we
that's right.
financed
So-
that, that's already set.
So I think, so that's pretty well covered, the tower. The options for the courthouse project are to use local option or to bond and create a new tax. Local option is
We'd
not.
rather not create a new
We'd
tax.
rather not create a new tax, that's why we wanna just use the local option, which we already are getting.
yeah, it's already available.
It's
Yeah.
already available, it's just changing where, on what we spend it.
Right.
Kinda like coupled with the school, in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I may, with respect to the proposed change to the purpose statement, I'm not convinced the change is even necessary, cause it already says "and any lawful purpose." It was poorly drafted, whoever drafted that language originally, it was poor draftsmanship. They should have said all along, "any lawful purpose." I mean, that's just good
Covers
legal
everything.
advice, that and when you create a corporation, nonprofit group, and you have to file articles of incorporation with the state secretary, Secretary of State, you always just say we're creating this nonprofit for any lawful purpose. I mean, you just wanna preserve, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given many, many years ago was always preserve your options. I mean, so you wanna have all the options available to you and to your successors on the board down the road. So I think, you know, this is a very important conversation to have about where money's coming from and how we're using it, but with respect to the very narrow question of the purpose statement, my advice would be, make it any lawful purpose, just to preserve your options going forward.
Wade?
I can speak to that slightly. I think when that first happened, I was here, and I think that most counties were doing it to offset property tax increases, and that's how that got passed. So many of them, probably over half, did it solely to the secondary road department, We chose to do it for rural property tax to start with, I believe, and then all property tax later on. But to that point, I guess, and I had a nice discussion, Billy and I did, you know, I've talked many times about this 75% limit that we have to do to fund for secondary road department, so we get our road use tax, our big part of the fund. And we're gonna be very close to that again, even with this local option sales tax money, because we're about $1 million less than what we could fund secondary road with between the rural and the all property taxes, the rural being the biggest portion of that. So I think you know, what Billy was saying, and we had that discussion last week about you know, keeping the funding in place, but that's purely up to you, how you want to do that. I think I'm gonna have to come in with some increases, not necessarily because of spending, but more because of keeping up with that 75% limit. So we're gonna have to increase both the general and rural property taxes already for secondary road department, just to maintain that 75% limit with the local option sales tax. And if you want to take a little bit of that local option sales tax away, then we would have to increase that slightly more. So it gives you a little leverage to do what you know, when we go through the budget, I'll have that listed out and you can decide how we want to do those funds. But
Just for expansion, the reason to stay at that 75 is to maximize what we receive.
yeah, we don't want to go through that minimum. It's the minimum amount that they'll say that if you're not helping yourself, we're not going to help you.
Okay.
And I always use the 15% and 85%. So 85% of the funding for the secondary road department comes from outside the county. Now, not all of it, because part of the road use tax is paid by citizens of Greene County, and part of the federal income tax and all those things, we get the money back to the federal government. But that's where the conflict happens. If they say, if you're not going to, if you're able to levy a rate for secondary roads that is less than 75% of what you could do, we're saying you don't really need our money either. And
we do.
We absolutely do. Yeah, and now it doesn't mean you lose it all, but you lose a portion of it. And they're in my 31 years, I mean, it happened here in Greene County about 33 years ago, and that wasn't good because you're giving up those other funding streams. But many counties around the state, they kind of teeter on that 75% just because they don't want to fund it, but once they figure out how much funding they're gonna lose, then they fund it. But sometimes it's a little too late, so that's why we have to. I'm just getting a little nervous how close we are at this point, because as the valuations increase, you know, that's what changes it for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think we're all
And we'll
on the
go
same
over that.
page.
We'll go over that in budget time, and then, like I said, if you and Billy decide that you need to get the local option sales tax money, you can always push that over onto the property tax also, but take a little bit out of local option sales tax.
Okay. Further discussion? So then, there's no other discussion, we move on to the next agenda item to consider the.
What about a sunset date? Do we have to decide on that too?
Yeah, you guys need to decide if you wanna discuss the,
Okay. Do you wanna have a sunset date?
If we do a sunset date, everybody's in the county sunset date's the same.
Yes.
Is that
And
correct?
then there would have to be an election at that
Now it
sunset.
is.
now it is.
Now it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they each, when they go, everyone, at this point, everyone's sunset date is 2027. So, everyone else, when we put it on the ballot in 26 for 27, then they would choose
When they look there.
when they would choose the sunset date. I think when we initially input imposed the local option sales tax, we had different sunset dates, and 10 years ago, everyone decided to have the same sunset date. That way it was just easier for us to remember
Yeah.
when it renewed.
The Chardon started up local auction sales
Yeah.
tax prior to anyone else. So
That's
there's
right.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone else, it passed, and then when we put it on the ballot again, it passed in everywhere else except for the city of Rippey. And then Rippey, I think the next time they could. And then, so that we had odd sunset dates, and then 10 years ago, we made it 2027. I know Kirsten had said that some of the counties are going with no sunset date, a lot of them are going like 15, 20 years. It just seems like 10 years, it just rolls around pretty quick.
So, yeah. And I don't know how pros and cons of no sunset date or an actual sunset date. And another part of our decision is this going to be palatable to all the communities that have to vote? I mean, if we declare no sunset date, that doesn't require everyone
No,
to do that.
no,
But they can.
but they can. Yeah.
And since we're changing our purpose to any lawful purpose, we won't be changing that again, we won't have a need to.
Right.
So,
So to me,
Really no reason
why
to go
is there a
back.
reason to have a sunset date? I guess if you're now having a reason to change your language, is there a reason to have a sunset date?
And that gives the community an opportunity to establish their own, right?
No,
Yeah.
Which,
and they already have.
Yeah,
so that makes
I
sense,
mean-
I guess.
yeah. And I guess they can either follow suit or,
it's
Yeah,
one
like
less
anything.
thing we have to put on a ballot
Mhm.
again. I mean, just throwing that out there.
wait,
I have one more comment, sorry about that. The ISAC Board of Directors, last year, I think, and Billy probably knows this too, they were talking about the local option sales tax, making that a statewide sales tax.
Yeah.
And what there was a lot of concern from the secondary road departments that were funded with a lot of this money, that they were gonna lose that. That was gonna be backfilled based on what the last vote was. So if it was through 2027, they would honor that, so the state, my understanding was the state would honor that. And because they were trying to fund REAP, the DNR, through the local option sales tax. But they were gonna honor the agreements that were there as long as they weren't hadn't sunsetted. So I think that this conversation is good, and I'm not well versed now to know what's gonna happen in the legislature next year, but that talk was still with the ISAC Board of Directors, that they're still looking at a statewide local option sales tax. So maybe a no sunset would kind of save us from
having to worry about that.
losing, potentially losing some, but that's just a guess on my part.
Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kinda hard to outguess what they're thinking.
Right,
And set ourselves up the best we can right now.
And they can change it to whatever they want anyway, so.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
And if we ever wanna end it or change it, we can do that, at any point in time still.
yeah.
The
it's
sunset
always
doesn't
a-
matter on that.
Right.
And I would say, yeah.
So we need a
No
motion
sunset.
on the no sunset and then changing the verbiage, or separate
separate.
motions, or one?
There's. Okay, so we need to do a resolution for the change of use.
For the
And
purpose.
Okay.
That's that resolution. Just,
You want me to read through this?
I don't think you need to read the whole thing, just, we need,
Board of Supervisors, we had a discussion on the matter calling for an election on the question of change of use of the local option sales tax and services tax revenues in the unincorporated portion of Greene County. And there'll be a board member introduce a resolution calling for an election on the question of a change in use of local officer sales tax and services tax revenues in the unincorporated portions of Greene County. And then there'll be a second for the adoption of that.
Okay, so we need a motion for that.
I move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. And then the next one
Is it the,
The sunset, the sunset.
the sunset.
Is it this?
Yeah.
and this will be a special election on the imposition of a local office sales tax and services tax within the incorporated areas of Greene County. And we are electing to have no sunset. A motion to make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of setting a no sunset? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And you're calling for a special election also. So the election will be March 5th of 2024. And that's part of this resolution also.
Does that have to have a percentage? 20%, huh?
It's just 50%.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be decided officially March 5th, 2024.
And the new, if it passes, the new purpose will go into effect July 1 of 2024. Yep.
Thank you, John.
Does, Scott,
Yes, Scott?
Yeah, so just, my understanding then is that the city of Jefferson still needs to be involved then to authorize the referendum then for this
Yes.
to happen?
Yes,
Okay.
we still need your motion to call for the election.
But that would just be, the authorization for this referendum in regards to the unincorporated
Mhm.
areas then, right? So would the cities have the rights to join in on this referendum if they would so choose?
I think timing wise, I don't know that we have enough time to get all their information to us. If you guys choose to, with your motion, you can, but the outlying cities, we need the information, there's a certain date that we need the information, and I don't think they would have enough time to consider it. So we're just gonna leave those until
Yeah.
26.
So that's, I guess the date when you need us to pass that resolution is really important,
Yes.
because then our next regular meeting would be on the 12th, and
And
so
that's, I
if
think,
that
still
doesn't
within
work,
the, yeah,
that's still okay?
yep, that's still
Okay,
okay.
and then the other
According to
thing-
Kristen, it was.
Okay, then the other thing that I would ask is that you'd have your attorney prepare the resolution then for the city
Yes.
to authorize the
Okay.
election then.
I'll have her send that to you.
Yep, that'd be
Okay.
great.
So we'll have a period of time, if this passes, that we won't all be on the same page. There are sunsets that outline
Sunsets will be different.
communities.
yeah, they'll still have a sunset 27.
They'll still have a sunset
Yeah,
of
They'll have to
27.
address it or.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when they're in 26, when we put it on the ballot, that's when they can decide what
How they
sunset
want.
date they
And
want.
they can still have their sunset
Yeah.
whenever they want it.
Yeah.
Right, if they choose to do a 10 years.
That gives
or-
them time to get their ducks in a row and
Yeah.
decide. what they
Yeah,
wanna do.
this was kind of short notice for everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. We've covered all that business.
I think so, yep.
Okay. Next item is to consider the engagement letter from Northland Securities as underwriter in connection with issuance of the general obligation bond series 2024 to finance the HVAC project.
So if, when this passes,
They're
this can go right into, and they can be doing
Yep, they can
exactly
do their, what they need to be
what they're
doing.
doing for,
Yep,
so we're not holding up the
Yeah.
process.
A motion to approve the engagement letter from Northland Securities as underwriter.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion passes. You need my signature on here?
yes.
and then I need your signatures on this, I have to do those.
Motion to pay the bills,
So moved.
I'll second.
all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Any other business?
I'm sorry, first and second.
I second.
That first.
Alright, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn.